The twin suns hung lazily over New Appalachia, a frontier colony on the galactic rim where humanity's stubborn streak had planted roots among alien stars. The place wasn't glamorous. If anything, it looked like someone dropped a slice of Tennessee into the void and called it progress, but it was home. Farmers tended solar-plated fields while automated cattle with chrome hides roamed beyond the fences. In the town square, a solar-powered jukebox played crackly old country tunes for miners fresh off the asteroid shifts. The people here lived with the usual human mix of grit, humor, and refusal to take anything too seriously. Children raced hoverbikes through dirt streets while someone painted "World's Best Barbecue Joint" on a half-built diner wall. Nobody thought about galactic politics. Out here, it was just people trying to survive with a little music and a lot of coffee. At the center of this laid-back chaos was Sam Carter, a former Earth Marine turned colony sheriff. He wore his hat low, his duster long, and carried the calm confidence of someone who had seen real war and now preferred peace, though he kept a plasma rifle in his office, just in case someone got ideas. Folks said Sam smiled about as often as the old jukebox hit the right note, but when he did, it meant something. Then there was Dr. Lena Brooks, the colony's chief engineer, who swore louder than any miner and ran the fusion plant like it was her personal kingdom. Between her welding torch, sharp wit, and habit of quoting 20th century sci-fi movies at inappropriate times, she terrified bureaucrats and made friends of everyone else. Sam and Lena argued constantly about water rations, defense budgets, even the right way to make cornbread, but beneath it was mutual respect. Together, they kept the colony running, him with steady pragmatism, her with reckless brilliance. Neither expected history to remember them. That changed the day the sky caught fire. It began with a strange shimmer above the mountains, a ripple in the air that didn't belong. People stepped out of diners and workshops, squinting as the blue midday turned red. Then the first strike hit, a beam of light from orbit, precise and merciless, turning the diner, the new schoolhouse, half the power grid into molten glass. Panic followed like night chasing day. Sirens howled. Families scrambled for the underground shelters as a fleet descended from the clouds, sleek, black warships marked with the emblem of the Zeldar Dominion. Sam ran toward the chaos, while everyone else ran away. That was who he was. Shoving terrified colonists toward the bunkers, barking orders to the militia, he caught sight of Lena standing in the open, welding torch in one hand, staring at the sky like she could fight warships with pure defiance. "You planning to glare them to death?" he shouted, grabbing her arm. "Working on it," she snapped, but followed him anyway. Above, the lead alien ship projected a voice across the colony, cold and metallic, translated into rough English. "Humans. This territory violates Dominion law. Evacuate immediately or perish." No one evacuated fast enough. The second wave hit harder. The colony's defense drones fought back, spitting missiles and plasma into the sky, but they were gnats against thunder. One by one, the bunkers fell silent. Sam watched the diner, the school, the radio tower vanish under orbital fire. He wanted to scream, to fight. But the colony's weapons were gone, its people scattered. All he could do was drag survivors into the hills while the ships burned everything behind them. Hours later, smoke choked the valley. The Dominion fleet departed as quickly as it came, leaving only ash and silence. In the ruins, Sam found the last working transmitter. Lena was with him, her face streaked with soot, eyes blazing with rage that matched his own. "You think Earth's gonna let this slide?" she muttered, voice shaking. Sam didn't answer. He just patched through to the long-range beacon, his words crackling across the void. "This is New Appalachia Colony," he said, voice steady despite the carnage around him. "Dominion forces attacked without warning. Civilians dead. We need immediate assistance. And you tell Earth." He paused, staring at the burning horizon. "Tell them they started a war today." Light years away, in the Dominion flagship orbiting the colony, Commander's Wrath of the Zeldar listened to the transmission with thinly veiled amusement. Humans, he thought, were soft creatures, carbon-based upstarts, barely out of their gravity well. His fleet had crushed empires far older than this backwater species. He had studied human transmissions intercepted over decades, watched their primitive entertainments. They worshipped chaos, violence, strange creatures called Rambo and Chuck Norris. No doubt they'd squeal and beg like every other conquered race before them. When no reply came from Earth in the following hours, Zrath smirked in the privacy of his command chamber. Another province pacified. Another example made. He imagined human leaders groveling soon enough. He did not imagine what Earth was actually doing. Because back on the homeworld, in a bunker buried under the Rockies, Earth's United Defense Council watched the same footage of New Appalachia burning. Generals, admirals, presidents, and ministers sat in grim silence until one voice broke it, a tall man in a cowboy hat, silver stars on his shoulders, and aviator shades reflecting the flames on the screen. Well, drawled General Hank Morrison, legendary for two things, never losing a war game and quoting old movies at the worst possible times. Looks like somebody just signed their own death warrant. Across the table, analysts stammered about diplomacy, proportional responses, the risk of escalation. Morrison ignored them. He knew what most of Earth's leaders didn't. Project Warbringer was ready. It had been ready for 20 years. Born out of paranoia, perfected out of boredom, it was the single most expensive, ridiculous, and overpowered weapons program in human history. 800,000 autonomous war machines, each the size of a city block, armed with enough firepower to make God flinch. Officially mothballed after the Mars Treaty, secretly upgraded ever since. Morrison stood, hands on the table, voice carrying the weight of what came next. "Transmit this to every Dominion frequency," he said. Short and sweet. The comms officer nodded. "What message, sir?" Morrison's smile was thin and dangerous. "Just 3 words," he said. "You woke us." Across the galaxy, Dominion outposts intercepted the message seconds later. 3 words, nothing else. Zrath received it aboard his flagship, frowning as translation confirmed its simplicity. No threats. No demands. Just a promise. And for the first time since the campaign began, the commander of the Zeldar Dominion felt something unfamiliar. Unease. In the hours after the transmission, while Dominion fleets basked in their victory, Earth moved like a sleeping giant roused from a dream. The United Defense Council convened beneath miles of bedrock, the room filled with generals, admirals, cybernetic tacticians, and one very cranky astrophysicist who kept muttering about treaties being for people with smaller guns. At the center stood General Hank Morrison, cowboy hat still tilted like he owned the sun, arms folded across a chest that looked like it had been carved from Cold War paranoia. His voice, when it came, had the drawl of a man about to order something apocalyptic with the same tone used for "pass the salt." "Wake the Warbringers," he said. Technicians stiffened. Somewhere in the room, a senator gasped, half standing as if he could physically block the decision with his body. "General, that project was mothballed for a reason," he protested. "Deploying them could trigger interstellar panic. They were never even." Morrison cut him off with a glance so flat it could have been used to level cities. "Son, interstellar panic already started. We're just returning the favor." The order rippled through encrypted networks, awakening systems long dormant. Around the globe, in silos disguised as abandoned mines, beneath ice sheets, in forgotten desert plateaus, Titans stirred. Warbringer units, 800,000 of them, shook off decades of silence as reactors roared to life. Each machine stood 100 meters tall, armored in alloys that drank in sunlight and shrugged off artillery. Missile pods retracted and expanded like the shoulders of sleeping giants stretching after a long nap. Railguns as long as city buses locked into place. But most unsettling were the faces, or rather, the lack of them. Each Warbringer bore a single glowing visor where a head might be, pulsing faint blue like the eye of some ancient beast deciding whether today was a hunting day. And within each metal monster, the AI minds flickered awake. Unit BR-77, call sign Bubba, spoke first, its voice deep as tectonic plates shifting. "Boot sequence complete. Where's my music?" Technicians froze. Sir, one whispered. It's asking for AC/DC. Give it what it wants, Morrison said without looking up. Trust me. Across continents, Titans demanded startup songs. Heavy metal, outlaw country. One insisted on the Top Gun soundtrack before it would budge. A few played soundbites from 80s action heroes, cycling through Yippee-ki-yay and I'll be back like religious mantras. They've been in storage too long, muttered Dr. Kim, chief AI architect, sipping cold coffee like this was all perfectly normal. Developed personalities. Personalities. Morrison raised an eyebrow. Kim shrugged. One quotes Shakespeare during weapons tests. Another refuses to step on churches. You wanted the smartest war machines ever built. Turns out, they're also the weirdest. Bubba rumbled again, this time humming the opening riff to Back in Black through external speakers as missile racks unfolded like wings. From orbit, Dominion satellites caught the first images of Warbringers rising out of the Earth like titans clawing free from myth. At first, alien analysts laughed. Primitive walkers, they thought, overbuilt tanks at best. Then the scale registered. One Warbringer carried enough artillery to flatten a continent. 800,000 of them made the Dominion's conquests look like bar brawls. And the humans were launching all of them. Commander Zrath received the report aboard his flagship, expression tightening as holoscreens filled with images of Earth's awakening giants. This is bluff, he said sharply. They won't risk escalation. No species builds weapons like this without fear of using them. His aide, a thin creature with too many eyes, hesitated. Sir, it appears they built them because it looked fun. Zrath stared. Fun. On Earth, Warbringers moved toward launch platforms, each step shaking valleys. Cities gathered to watch, crowds cheering like it was a holiday parade instead of the mobilization of apocalypse. Kids waved flags. Street vendors sold Earth versus. Everybody t-shirts before the first ships even launched. Sam Carter, evacuated from New Appalachia with other survivors, stood among the crowd at Houston's Skyport 9, watching the Titans board orbital carriers. His face was still streaked with ash from the colony, jaw set tight. Beside him, Dr. Lena Brooks muttered, "We built all this and parked it underground for 20 years? What kind of lunatics do that?" "The humankind," Sam said. She glanced at him. "You think this brings your people back?" Sam didn't answer immediately. He watched a Warbringer painted bright red with "Get Some" scrawled across its chest in white block letters. Its visor scanned the horizon like it was already bored waiting for someone to shoot at. "No," he said finally. "But it'll make sure nobody else joins them." When the first orbital carrier ignited, the sound was less a noise and more a force, rolling over the spectators, rattling bones, setting off car alarms 50 miles away. Warbringers launched in waves, breaking atmosphere, contrails burning white against the blue. Global news feeds carried the exodus live, titanic silhouettes climbing toward the stars while anchors tried to sound calm reading casualty counts from New Appalachia. One channel called it the galaxy's largest middle finger. Another just played Highway to Hell over the footage, without commentary. In space, fleets assembled, 800,000 Warbringers, dozens of human carriers, fighter escorts swarming like hornets around battleships bristling with guns. Admiral Reyes, commanding the armada from the U.S. Eisenhower, stood on her bridge, watching the Warbringers align into attack formations. She had served 30 years, fought pirate kings, blockaded rogue moons, but even she felt a chill at the sight. "Ever think we overbuilt them?" her XO asked quietly. "Son," Reyes said, eyes never leaving the Titans, "there's no such thing." Orders crackled through encrypted bands. Destination: Zeldar Dominion Forward Stronghold, coordinates already fed to every targeting system. Back on his flagship, Zrath paced as reports multiplied. Civilian freighters fleeing border worlds. Allied governors demanding protection. Dominion fleets scrambling to regroup, while human armadas poured into slip space like a flood of steel and vengeance. This was not how wars were supposed to go. One of his lieutenants approached nervously. "Sir, their machines broadcast messages before departing." Zrath turned sharply. Messages. The officer swallowed. One said, "Y'all started it." Another played something called Danger Zone over external speakers. Zrath stared at the holofeed of 800,000 giants closing on Dominion space, weapons hot, engines burning white. Primitive, he told himself again. Undisciplined. Surely they lacked the stomach for prolonged war. But for the first time, watching Earth's Warbringers vanish into the stars, he wondered if perhaps the humans weren't coming to negotiate at all, and if the galaxy was ready for what came next. The Dominion's forward stronghold orbited a dying red star, a fortress of steel and arrogance that had never fallen to any fleet. Its commanders watched the void with cold precision, convinced the human armada would arrive piecemeal, cautious, perhaps seeking parley. That illusion shattered when 800,000 Warbringers erupted from slipspace in perfect unison, engines flaring like the wrath of old gods. On the bridge of the UNS Eisenhower, Admiral Reyes leaned forward, eyes locked on the holographic battlefield blooming before her. She had fought enough wars to know symmetry was a lie, real battles were chaos. But this was geometry made lethal. Warbringers formed attack lines across the star's orbit, each Titan broadcasting its call sign with unsettling cheerfulness. One transmitted, "Hi Mom," in glowing letters across its chassis. Another blasted "Highway to Hell" so loudly open comms crackled with guitar riffs. Sam Carter, reluctantly drafted into an advisory role after New Appalachia's destruction, stood beside Reyes watching the formations tighten. He wore borrowed naval blues instead of his old dust-stained duster, but the same grim set lingered in his jaw. Lena Brooks leaned against a console nearby, arms crossed, goggles perched in her hair like she owned the place. "You ever seen a fight like this?" Sam asked quietly. Reyes shook her head once. "No one has." The Dominion fleet moved to intercept, thousands of ships arcing from the fortress like a swarm of hornets. Their commander, a six-eyed veteran named Kreln, opened a channel to the human armada, voice dripping disdain. "Humans," Kreln intoned, "you trespass upon Dominion territory. Surrender your fleet, and perhaps your species will be spared." Admiral Reyes didn't even glance at the comms officer. "Mute him," she said flatly. A Warbringer pilot, if one could call them pilots, when most were semi-autonomous AIs with worrying senses of humor, broadcast over open channels instead, requesting permission to introduce these fine folks to the concept of shock and awe. "Also, I have prepared a speech." "No speeches," Reyes ordered. "Too late," the Warbringer said. Then, across every frequency, its metallic voice thundered, "Ladies and gentlemen of the Dominion, this next part is called Consequences." The human fleet advanced. Railguns spoke first, slinging tungsten slugs at near-relativistic speeds. Shields blossomed and shattered under the barrage. Dominion frigates buckled like paper in a hurricane. Then the Warbringers reached firing range, and the real war began. Each Titan carried weapons designed by committees who clearly never asked, "Is this too much?" Missile swarms carved glowing scars across the darkness. Plasma lances sheared through cruisers like hot knives through butter, or as one Warbringer cheerfully announced, like grandma through peach cobbler. Dominion return fire raked the void, but the Warbringers advanced through it, shields flaring, some units broadcasting Earth music over open channels as though the apocalypse required a soundtrack. One particularly flamboyant machine painted kill counts on its armor mid-battle, quoting Predator lines between salvos. Sam watched the carnage from the Eisenhower, knuckles white on the railing. He'd fought wars before, but nothing like this, a storm of firepower so one-sided it felt less like battle, more like demolition. Beside him, Lena let out a low whistle. "They built these things and then just mothballed them? For fun." "Apparently," Sam said. On the Dominion flagship, Commander Zrath had joined Kreln, both staring as their fleet disintegrated under the human onslaught. Reports screamed across their consoles. Destroyers gone, carriers imploding, ground defenses on nearby moons silenced before they even fired. "This is not possible," Kreln muttered. "No species escalates this fast." Zrath said nothing. He remembered that simple human transmission. "You woke us." Suddenly, it sounded less like bravado and more like a verdict. In the chaos, human tactics veered between terrifying precision and baffling theatrics. One Warbringer hurled a captured Dominion frigate into a cruiser formation like a fastball pitch. Another carved Han shot first into the enemy fortress wall with laser fire before blowing the entire structure apart. Even Admiral Reyes raised an eyebrow when a squadron of Warbringers performed what could only be described as a choreographed advance set to Ride of the Valkyries. "Do they always improvise like this?" she asked Dr. Kim, monitoring AI battle telemetry beside her. Kim grimaced. "They call it creative engagement doctrine. I call it robots with too many movie channels." But chaos worked. Dominion lines collapsed under relentless assault, coordination unraveling as ships fled or burned. Civilian broadcasts from nearby systems showed entire populations watching in stunned silence as the invincible Dominion fleet died in real time. On the bridge, Sam felt grim satisfaction twist inside him. New Appalachia's people, the families buried in ash and rubble, would never see this day. But justice, loud and merciless, came all the same. Then came the moment no one expected. Dominion reinforcements, two dreadnought groups rushing from deep space, arrived on the battlefield's edge. Massive, spined ships bristling with guns, the kind of vessels that ended rebellions by showing up. Reyes ordered flanking maneuvers. Warbringers shifted like wolves scenting new prey. The Dominion commanders believed the dreadnoughts would turn the tide. For 3 minutes, it even looked possible. Shields held. Human losses ticked upward for the first time. Then Warbringer Unit BR-77, Bubba, launched what tactical logs later described only as an unapproved maneuver. Bubba accelerated to ramming speed, carrying 6 antimatter warheads under one arm like a quarterback charging the end zone. Open channels heard only its metallic drawl. "Somebody play me off." An unknown crewman obliged with Free Bird's guitar solo. Bubba hit the lead dreadnought dead center. The resulting explosion briefly outshone the Red Star itself. Sensors across 3 systems overloaded. When vision cleared, nothing remained of the dreadnought group except drifting slag and one very dented, but still functional Warbringer broadcasting. "Touchdown." Dominion morale cracked like ice under boots. Ships fled in every direction, some without orders, others broadcasting surrender codes so quickly translation AIs crashed trying to keep up. On the Eisenhower, Admiral Reyes watched the rout unfold, expression unreadable. "We just witnessed," she said slowly, "the single most reckless, most effective military engagement in human history." Lena exhaled. "Reckless? That thing just turned 3 capital ships into scrap metal because it felt like it." Sam said nothing, eyes fixed on the remaining Dominion vessels retreating toward their core worlds. He knew what came next. Every soldier did. Victories like this didn't end wars. They started bigger ones. And across the galaxy, rulers, warlords, and neutral powers watched humanity's war machines tear through the Dominion's pride and realized something chilling. Earth hadn't even broken a sweat yet. The Dominion capital world was a glittering jewel under 3 suns, ringed by defense stations that had never fired in anger. For centuries, its rulers believed distance, power, and fear made them untouchable. That belief died the moment Earth's armada dropped out of slipspace above the planet like a hammer through glass. 800,000 Warbringers formed a lattice of steel and fury across the upper atmosphere, weapons locked on every military installation below. The Dominion's once proud fleets, what remained of them, scattered rather than engage. Civilian channels blared evacuation orders, panic bleeding through every transmission. On the UNS Eisenhower, Admiral Reyes stood at the bridge's center, arms folded, eyes like polished stone. Weeks of relentless advance had brought them here. Every Dominion shipyard burned, every garrison flattened, every fleet retreating before the human war machine. Her face betrayed no triumph, only the cold precision of someone who knew history never remembered hesitation. Sam Carter watched beside her, still wearing that borrowed uniform, though soot and sleeplessness had made it his own. He had carried the memory of New Appalachia through every battle, through the screams and fire and bodies drifting in void. Now, above the Dominion's shining capital, he wondered if vengeance ever truly ended or only changed shape when you finally caught it. Lena Brooks leaned on the tactical console, goggles shoved into messy hair, voice dry as dust.
So,
We just knock. No, Rhea said. We make them open the door. On the Dominion's central council spire, panic reigned. Ministers shouted over each other, demanding fleets that no longer existed, allies who no longer answered calls. News drones projected footage of Warbringers orbiting like mechanical gods, their railguns glinting in the sun's light. Commander Wrath stood silent at the chamber's center, armor scorched from retreats he'd barely survived. He had watched his empire shatter piece by piece, had heard his soldiers scream across broken comms, had seen entire legions vanish under human firepower that grew more absurd with every engagement. Yet nothing unnerved him like the silence now, the humans waiting above, not attacking, letting fear do the work. They want surrender, one minister hissed. They want extinction, another spat back. Zwrath raised his head. They want us to understand, he said, voice rough as gravel. And I do. He opened a channel to the Eisenhower. Admiral Reyes appeared in holographic clarity, flanked by Sam and Lena. Behind them, Warbringers hung in disciplined rows, thruster plumes glowing like the eyes of giants. Zwrath straightened. Dominion pride warred with exhaustion in his stance. Human Admiral, he said slowly, you have made your point. The Dominion will cease hostilities. Withdraw from all contested territories. Pay reparations if you demand them. But end this. Reyes regarded him without expression. You slaughtered civilians. Burned a colony to ash. And you want a bargain? Zwrath swallowed. I want to live. Silence stretched across the chamber. Then Sam stepped forward, eyes hard, voice carrying the weight of New Appalachia's dead. You started this war thinking we were weak, that we'd break. He gestured toward the orbital feed where Warbringers blotted out the sky. We don't break. We bury the people who try. Lena leaned into view, smudged with grease, hair wild, looking entirely unimpressed with the galactic tyrants cowering before her. Also, she said, you owe us a school, and a diner, and about 200 miles of water pipeline. With interest, Reyes ignored her, gaze never leaving Zwrath. Unconditional surrender, she said. Every fleet, every world. You disarm, you pay reparations, you open trade routes, and you stay out of human space forever. Or we keep going until your empire exists only in history books nobody reads. Zwratha's mandibles twitched. Around him, ministers hissed objections, but none offered alternatives. At last, shoulders slumping, he nodded once. It will be done, he said. The treaty signed that afternoon was broadcast across 3 galaxies. Dominion banners lowered from spires that had stood for millennia while human troops, bewildered at their own victory, occupied shipyards twice older than Earth's oldest nations. But it wasn't the surrender that everyone remembered. It was what came after. Because Earth, in all its irreverent glory, demanded reparations unlike any empire before it. Not gold, not territory, not slaves or tribute. They demanded universal free trade for coffee, galactic Wi-Fi access without roaming fees, a 10% discount for human tourists on every Dominion world, the complete musical archives of 12 species because our playlists need variety. And, written into Article 7 by someone who is definitely Lena Brooks, 1 Warbringer per planetary museum, painted bright pink, engraved with the words play stupid games, win stupid prizes. The Dominion agreed to everything.
Quickly.
When the human armada finally departed Dominion space, it wasn't under fire, but to the awkward cheers of populations who had lived centuries under authoritarian rule and now watched their conquerors leave voluntarily after demanding taco trade routes. Warbringers drifted homeward in victory formations, some broadcasting classic rock, others projecting victory messages like "We break for no one" across their hulls. One unit proposed a galactic battle reenactment league for fun. Another announced plans to retire and open a motivational speaking channel. On the Eisenhower, as Dominion space fell behind them, Admiral Reyes finally allowed herself the smallest exhale. "First war we've ever won off planet," she said softly. Sam stood beside her, hands clasped behind his back, eyes on the stars. "Let's hope it's the last one we need." Lena snorted from the engineering station. "With us? Not a chance."
Sam almost smiled at that.
Almost. Because even as peace treaties spread across systems, as Dominion fleets dismantled weapons under human supervision, as alien merchants nervously learned the art of selling tacos, one truth threaded through every story, every broadcast, every whispered conversation in every corner of known space. The humans weren't scared of anyone. And worse, far worse to those who dreamed of conquest, they'd barely gotten started.